And we are back. Back to the past Samurai Jack. Because that's definitely how they pronounce it in the season intro for the first 4 seasons. Or the episode intro. It should be just Samurai, and every other time in the show it's Samurai Jack. But, that was not the best Aku impression, but... Oh, that's another thing that's weirdly pronounced, is sometimes it's Aku and sometimes it's Aku. I don't know what the deal with that is. But yeah, speeding this process up, just going to get this little heart piece over here. Well, I say little, it's pretty big. But not nearly as big as the heart containers, those are kind of humongous. And, I want to point out these fairies tiers here. I can't remember if I got these actually from Giovanni, because he gives you a bottle of fairies tears after you give him 20 post souls. But I think I got those from the Cave of Ordeals, which I have played through once. And I will show off the second time at a different time. But here's the magic armor. As you can see in the bottom right corner, rupees are slowly going down. But that's not the only purpose. That would be kind of lame if that was the only purpose. Whenever you get hit, your rupees go down a little faster, but you don't lose any life. Which I think is usually pretty pointless. Not really the best reward in my opinion, but it's still an interesting uniform to have. Very expensive, for more reasons than one. But you know, what's more important, life or money? And I guess because I never wear it, it must be money for me. I don't know. I like keeping the rupees around for other purposes, because even though they're pretty easy to get in this game, it can be kind of a grind to get them back. We have another important cutscene. Since we're finally approaching the second to last dungeon, which probably should have been the last dungeon, but then they decided to add more to the story. That's my theory anyway. Definitely seems like Zant was going to be the main villain of this game, until they decided, you know what, let's bring back Ganon. Why not? This monolith, or whatever it is pretty cool, I think. Just the weird, trippy black and white effects. What Midna says here, I think she said something to this effect before, just... The Twilight in our own world is really pretty, and the Twilight Palace is not so different. Which I agree with. Oh, hey, it's these characters again who never appear outside of cutscenes. And have pancakes on their heads. I hope you can find it in us to in you to forgive us. Oh, Twilight Princess. Oh, there's the title of the game. You know it must be important. Except this time it's Midna who is the Twilight Princess. Which is more accurate than before. It is quite amazing how much she has grown through the course of the game, and I think this cutscene displays that pretty well. It's kind of the summary of her character development. We got a brief glimpse of her true form there. Gotta say, whenever she gets turned into an imp, not the biggest fan of her hairstyle. She looks a lot better with a helmet on. Thankfully she gets the helmet in unknown ways pretty soon. Yeah, that's like not quite Jack from Jak and Daxter hair, but almost. She's got the ears too, the Jak ears. I guess it's not a mask, it's a fused shadow. Yep, we know you have great teeth. You need to stop showing them off right now. Okay, this is never explained, as far as I know. We've long believed that the hero would appear as a divine beast. What are they basing this on? Is that just some prophecy that they found? Is that, like, based on anything? I like this smile a lot better. It is such a perfect curved smile. I only cared about returning our world to normal. I didn't care about what happened to the world of light, not at all. For some reason, this shot with the mirror in the background, it kind of looked like the moon to me, like she's against the moon, which would be kind of fitting. But after witnessing the selfless lengths of you and the princess, I now know in the bottom of my heart that I must save this world. There is no other way. I need to stop reading so fast. But yeah, it's like all of her concern now is in reviving Zelda. She wants what's best for her world as well, but... like, you know, this Light World place, it's actually pretty cool. It's not crappy like I thought it was. So long, Pancake Halos. It was nice meeting you. Yeah. So onwards we go to the Twilight Palace, I guess. Has this cool bridge that appears out of nowhere. I don't know whether to say it's technological or not. I feel like Skyward Sword made things seem too futuristic whenever it implemented magic into the game, whereas this game does a better job, I feel, of having magic that just feels more magical, even if there's a little bit of a technological seeming aspect to it, if that makes any sense. Twilight Palace is... well, we'll get to that in a second, I guess, after Midna's request. She wants to keep hiding as our shadow, because she's ashamed and... like, people would be disappointed to see her as an imp, I guess, instead of her true form. You don't have to be sorry. But yeah, this place is freaking beautiful. I know it has a lot of bloom, and I'm sure that a lot of people kind of hate it for that, but I don't think the bloom really detracts from it at all. I think it just adds more of an ethereal effect, maybe. And these are the inhabitants of the world, who look evil but are not. It's not what's on the outside that counts. It's what's on the sideways that counts, or something. Yeah, this is just Neon Tattoo World, except it's not just the characters that are tattooed, it's also the walls. My general thoughts on this dungeon are, it is a very linear dungeon, which is fine, I think. It doesn't feel like one of the longer dungeons, but it still takes about an hour to get through. I think it's got a great tone to it. I think most of the appeal of the dungeon will be more evident by two hands. I'm gonna have to pay attention to those hands, actually. I'm just thinking about them in advance. Yeah, but I like the dark light theme that this dungeon has going for it. I think it's done quite well. As far as my own life outside of this game, I just got done watching a bunch of America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent videos, just because those are kind of fascinating to watch. Just, well, you see all these talented singers and musicians and stand-up comics and things, and also other people who do other ridiculous stuff. The thing that fascinates me about it, I guess, is that I'm always kind of this person who wants to explore a little bit of everything. I mentioned at some point that I feel like this game is a little bit of a jack of all trades in a way. And I feel like I'm kind of that way too. I would like to try to dabble in just about everything, which is why I am an animator and a game designer, and I try to make music and record sound effects. I like to try to take pretty pictures if I see something worth taking a picture of. Hip-hop, singing. Not so much singing. I don't think I have a singing voice, but you know, I try to do a little bit of everything. I feel like it's worth exploring as many possibilities as possible. Is that a weird thing to say? As many possibilities as possible? Whatever. But yeah, it's weird looking at shows like that and seeing what people dedicate their lives to and thinking, you know, if I dedicated my life to that, I could be just as good as they are at that thing. You know, like I could be juggling 6 balls in the air at once if I decided to dedicate my life to juggling a long time ago. I could be on America's Got Talent right now if I wanted to be. Just for doing something like that. Because it's not like, man, I wish I could do those things, you know, it's... People say a lot of the time, like, I wish I could draw, but there's nothing stopping you from starting your practice on that sort of thing. I'm pretty happy with where I am. I don't really have an interest in spending my life juggling or whatever, but I feel like if I wanted to, then I could become better at that. I guess I'm using juggling as an example because I think it's more interesting than the singing. Singing is certainly a very profitable skill or talent, but it's also less interesting than most. It's just everyone sings, or everyone at least makes an attempt at singing. It's something that's kind of, you know, it's obviously the most popular thing on YouTube. You always see music videos and things getting all the hundreds of millions of views. So it's not really a surprise. Just, yeah, that's why I think America's Got Talent is a little bit more interesting than American Idol. Because American Idol is just singing. Even though people have some interesting stories and they sing super beautifully, it's just, it's all the same stuff. It's all the same music stuff. Okay, that looks like a right hand. I don't know if this hand is a right hand and the other hand is a left hand. They're probably both right hands, which is a little bit disappointing. Although on the Wii it would be a left hand, so... I hope you like this mini-boss, because we're going to see it a few times. It's pretty great. I don't really mind this mini-boss, but it does seem to be part of the reason the dungeon takes as long as it does, which it doesn't take that long, but it's still... like, there's not really a fast way to beat it. It's one of those Ocarina of Time situations where you have to do a lot of waiting. But at least this is one of the few occasions where it feels like you really have to do a lot of waiting in this game. Another thing I was going to say about the American Idol situation. I remember seeing... there are these American Idol behind-the-scenes clips. Or maybe not clips. But I think there was some kind of American Idol rewind or something, where it's just a show to see what kind of people didn't make the cut. And that can be pretty baffling to watch, because most of the time they're just really, really awful, and the judges have to point out how miserable they are. But there was this one guy that I felt really bad for, who, I don't know his name, but he looked like Neville Longbottom, and I'm sorry for making that comparison, but he really does. And he looked like, well, I saw comments saying he looks kind of like a big teddy bear, and you just want to hug him. Because he seemed like a perfectly respectable guy. And Simon called him the worst singer in the world, which, coming from Simon, who's already pretty critical, like, saying something as harsh as that is kind of a humongous insult. All things considered, I'd say he took it pretty well. But I don't know if I agree with Simon on that point. Like, the guy had a pretty crappy singing voice, but his main problem was that he was just really nasally with all of his singing. If he didn't sing through his nose, he would probably do pretty well, because he had reasonable pitch, and it seemed like he had passion in his voice and everything. It just needed to not be a nose. Because the nose might nose many things, but it doesn't nose all. That didn't work with that tense. The nose knows. Yeah. We've got a hand in the style of, what is it, that Godan boss in Wind Waker, who I think is just supposed to be like God Hand but spelled slightly differently. That's what I got out of it. And it, very spookily, like a master... not a master hand. Well, kind of like a master hand, but like a floor master, it slowly makes its way towards the soul that we have in our possession. Just trying to take it away from you. And it makes this part really intense. It's not super difficult to get through this, but the tension is still there, and I really like that. And it's the only part in the game that I feel like is this tense. But it suits the world and the atmosphere quite well. It can be a little bit confusing at times, figuring out how to deal with getting the sphere all the way to the end, because it's a little bit maze-like with these platforms that appear, but I think in this case I didn't have too much trouble. And if you're having trouble, then you can just shoot the hand with an arrow, or actually I think it's like 3 arrows, and then it'll stop for a little while. So really, it shouldn't be tense, but it still has the feeling of being tense. I like how its middle 2 fingers are just slightly lower than the outer fingers, the pinky and the pointer finger. Is the pointer finger the same thing as the index finger? I think it is. That's just kind of an odd thing to think about, I guess. Hey, another piece of heart. Which... I don't think there's only one left in the... Well, actually, no, there might just be one left in the game. Yeah, there is. Because I still haven't gotten, at this point in the recording, the heart container that I left all the way back in the Goron Mines. But don't worry, I get around to that eventually. I was gonna say that it looks like the hand is giving this half-hearted attempt at an I love you sign. Just... yeah, it doesn't want to attack you, it just wants to love on the ball.